Hey everyone, so cold email is one of those topics that can be really controversial, but it's also a really popular method to generating leads and growing business, especially if you're a bootstrap company. And I'm always seeing people posting in Facebook groups and all over that, they want to buy email lists or they're trying to sell a list with 500,000 people in it. And there's some things that you really want to avoid. I mean, there's obviously laws and stuff like that. I'll get into a few things there, but you got to make sure if you're going to do cold email, you want to do it right. So in this video, I wanted to go through some best practices for cold email and give you some resources and tools to help you in that endeavor. So let's get started. My name is Patrick Spielman. I'm the founder of Uptics, and we help B2B sales teams launch outbound sales campaigns, pack their deal pipeline, and drive top-line revenue with our sales automation platform, Uptics. So let's get going. So first of all, just so you're aware, if you aren't that experienced with cold email, systems like Gmail have really, really powerful filters and algorithms that help them filter out emails and, bucket them into promotions and, social inbox and even spam. And one of the last things you want to do is end up in spam. That's one of the biggest threats with cold email is ending up in spam and getting your domain blacklisted. So here's a few tips that I want you to keep in mind to make sure you're not landing in spam. And even if you do follow these, there's still a chance that you can do that, especially if you're doing a lot of volume, which I'll get into in the next slide here. So first and foremost, you want to make sure that you're following all CAN spam laws. I'm not a lawyer by any means, and I don't know where you live, of course, but you need to make sure you're following all the local, rules, regulations, all that kind of stuff. You should really work to limit the volume of the cold emails that you send by making really highly targeted lists with as many personalizations as humanly possible in those lists. And you really want to clean and scrub these lists really, really well. Don't just send an email to send an email. Make sure you have a purpose behind it and you've done your research as much as you can with that particular prospect. You need to find the balance between volume and personalization. You also need to think about reducing the number of spam words that you're putting in your emails. So there's not one list out there for mitigating spam words within your emails, but there's a lot of resources online. And actually, we're building this into the Uptics platform as well. You also want to make sure you're limiting the number of URLs in your email. So you don't just want to paste a bunch of URLs, and you typically want to show the entire URL, including the HTTPS. It just helps with confidence. And if you're trying to get somebody to click through that hasn't heard of you, most people are apprehensive to click. So you want to limit the number of URLs. If you're trying to book a meeting, don't just put a link in the email to your Calendly or your booking system. You actually want to get your prospects to reply to you. And that actually helps the email clients like Gmail and stuff like that with their algorithms to determine, if people are actually engaging with your emails. You also want to limit the amount of images in the body of your emails, particularly with cold email. I happen to use a lot of images with our nurturing emails, but these are people that are, opening our emails, they're clicking, they're reading our content, they're watching YouTube videos, stuff like that. So it's fine if you've got a warm or hot list, but with cold email, you really want to limit the amount of images that you're putting in there. And if you're going to use an image, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to the size of the image. And then another best practice would be to run your emails through some sort of system that helps determine if you're inboxing. And I've used a system called GLOC apps in the past that helps you determine where you're landing. If you're gonna, with Google, if you're gonna land in the inbox, if you're gonna land in spam and all that kind of stuff. So those are kind of my top, best practices for prior to launching, your cold email. Now getting into some resources for building lists, because I'm sure you're interested in that. So I talk about 5 different campaigns, actually 6 campaigns. The last one is launching cold email or cold campaigns. It's not just cold email. It's also, cold calling and stuff too. So after you launch those first 5 campaigns, and if you're not familiar with what those campaigns are, I'll put a link above. You can click on that. You can check that video out. And I talk about the 6 different campaigns in that video. So after you do that, you want to then move on to cold outreach. And one of the things you really, really want to pay attention to and think about before you start building lists is that it's really tempting to just get as many emails and as many people in those lists as possible. And here's why you don't want to do that. You don't want to do it because you need to think about cold email as a long haul process. You don't just want to use it to try to send, tons and tons of emails all at once. If you start blasting servers with a bunch of emails all at one time and you haven't warmed up your domain and stuff like that, you've got a higher risk of landing in spam. So this is something that you need to sort of build into. Also, the other thing you need to balance is volume versus being highly targeted. Just sending an email, like I mentioned before, to send an email, it's not going to work. Email's been around long enough as a marketing and sales tool that people know and obviously are going to get hit with cold emails quite a bit. So just playing the volume game, people typically know that you're just blasting, massive amounts of volume. So you want to mix in and you want to balance really, really highly targeted outreach with volume and automation. So you're better off building lists that are targeted, or once you have the list, scrubbing the list really well, going out, doing some research on your prospects, especially the ones that you value really high in your list, and finding out some information about them that you can utilize in your cold campaign so that when they open it, they're more likely to actually respond and, reply, click, whatever it is, the goal that you're trying to accomplish. The more targeted and highly personalized that you can make those, the better. And, as I've already mentioned, quantity versus quality. You got to shift your mindset from quantity to quality. It's better to have fewer emails, but higher quality ones than it is more emails and lower quality ones. Again, because one of the biggest threats to cold email is landing in spam, and you don't want that to happen to you. Now, some resources in terms of building lists after you've factored all this stuff in. I've used a system called Hunter.io. I've used Seamless.ai. I've used Upleads, and Uptics. We're actually launching a list building tool within our platform as well. So all of these systems have, their, pros, cons, all that kind of stuff, but they're pretty good. They've been around in the market for a little while and they've seen pretty good success. So these are some tools that you can use to build your list. Now, one of the most important parts of building your list, once the list is built, and you have that list of decision makers and you've cleaned the list in terms of getting rid of prospects that you don't want in that list, now you need to clean the list with email validation. And what this is going to do is just validate that it's an actual email address. It's not a spam trap email. It's not an invalid email. And what it's going to do once you've ran it through these particular algorithms, it's going to help reduce your bounced emails, which is then going to help mitigate you landing in spam and getting your domain blacklisted, which you absolutely don't want. So next, I want to go through a tool. We use exclusively a system called Zero Bounce, and we've actually done a native integration with an Uptics with Zero Bounce. So you actually don't even need to go out and sign up for a separate platform. Historically, you got to export a list, import it into your validation system, export it, import it back into your system. And what we've done is made it really, really easy. You store all your leads in Uptics anyway, as we're a sales automation platform, of course. I'm in my demo account here. So imagine you've got all your leads here. And as they come into the system, either through a manual entry, through a Zapier connection, or through an import, the system's going to automatically validate your email address if you have the setting turned on. So you just turn it on. As a new contact comes into the system, it's automatically going to validate it and it's going to return these types of responses. And we recommend having the valid, catch-all, and unknown responses allowed in the system. The rest of them, you don't want to email responses that come back in this manner. And so what this is going to do then, we turn these settings on to apply these rules to any bulk email or to any automated sequences that are getting sent through the Uptics platform. And those email addresses that do not fall within what you allow the system to send will not send those. And that's going to help prevent your emails from bouncing. And it's going to help prevent you from landing in spam, which is super, super important. So that's my training for today, my little mini cold email training. If you got some value out of it, I'd love if you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. I try to do 5 new videos every single week, and you can get alerts if you hit that bell. And lastly, if you want to get started with sales automation and launching some cold email campaigns and easily managing and validating your email addresses with Zero Bounce within the Uptics platform, you can get started with Uptics absolutely free. So I hope you found this video helpful, and we'll see you on the next one.